Welcome to the Collabo podcast. Thank you for listening. Hello and welcome to the Collabo podcast. I am Ricciardo.
Oh, sorry, you scared me, Richard.
Sorry.
Yeah. So, what's today's podcast topic?
Today's podcast topic is nuclear power. That's Genshi Ryoku, if I can read my Japanese there.
Oh, I don't like it. I don't think we should have nuclear power. You know me, I'm always scared. I think it's really dangerous.
Really? Why do you think nuclear power is dangerous?
Well, because of the terrible disasters that there's been. There was the Fukushima Daiichi disaster in 2011. It was caused by the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean, I know about that, of course. I was in Japan at the time. I was living in Tokushima, and I remember watching the news that day and being a bit scared. Although Tokushima was a long way away from Fukushima, it was still quite scary. And Fukushima's still in the news today in Japan. I think recently they were talking about putting some of the radiated seawater back into the sea. But yeah, so that's still topical today. But you mentioned other disasters. Do you know of any other nuclear disasters?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest one was Chernobyl in the 1980s. They think that's the worst nuclear disaster there's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can you remember that?
Yeah, I was about 15 years old when Chernobyl happened. Can you remember it?
Not exactly, but I have a memory of people escaping the disaster and moving to near my hometown.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that. I remember being quite scared at the time, and the newspapers were telling us to keep our windows closed on certain days because the wind from Russia was sending the radiation over towards our direction. And I remember that there were some farm animals that we couldn't eat for a while because they were out on the hillsides and they'd been affected by radiation. So it was dangerous to eat them. So sheep, I think.
Right, well, that's it, I guess. No need for nuclear power. See you next week, guys.
No, it's not as simple as that, Tom.
What?
It's not as simple as that. Yes, nuclear reactors can sometimes be dangerous, but it might actually be a good thing for the world, nuclear energy.
Why is that?
Well, it's linked again to our SDGs.
The Sustainable Development Goals?
That's right. Number 7 Sustainable Development Goal is about providing clean and affordable, that means cheap, clean and cheap energy for everyone.
Okay, so why is clean and cheap energy one of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals?
Well, if we can provide everybody with cheap and clean energy, it has lots of benefits. If we provide energy, we can reduce poverty, we can support health and education, we can help businesses, and we can reduce hunger, so we can produce more food. So lots of reasons for providing energy.
Okay, so providing clean energy can make the world a more equal and fair place. But the SDGs talk about clean energy. You know, we've had these disasters in the past. Don't they damage the environment and harm animals, etc.?
Well, it's surprising, but nuclear power is actually quite clean. There's very little waste in the process, so if we compare nuclear power with other kinds of energy like fossil fuels, nuclear power is really clean.
Fossil fuel. What does that mean again?
So fossil fuels are things like oil and gas and coal, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And if you think of fossil fuels like wood, oil and coal, they produce a lot of gas, and that can damage the environment. So in fact, as long as there isn't a disaster, then nuclear power is actually really clean.
What about space? Don't nuclear power plants take up lots of space?
Well, actually, no. If you think with nuclear power, you need a very small amount of nuclear material to produce energy, and it produces energy very, very efficiently. So you get a lot of energy from a very small amount of nuclear material, and so in fact you don't need much space for a nuclear power plant.
But what about other renewable energy sources?
So renewable energy, so you're talking about things like wind power and water power and power from the sun, solar power, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right. So renewable energy sources like wind and solar are clean and safe, right? Renewable energy is safer than nuclear power, isn't it?
Yeah, it's certainly safer, but these renewable energy sources do have some disadvantages. For example, wind power. So wind power, we need a lot of space for wind power. We need to put the wind turbines up. They're not very efficient, so each wind turbine doesn't create that much energy. We need a lot of land to put wind farms on, and some people think wind power generators are really ugly and they spoil the environment. And sometimes wind turbines kill birds. And it's not windy all the time, is it?
Right, yeah. So when there's no wind, there's no power, or no power being generated.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. So I suppose it's the same for solar power. At night, there's no power being generated.
Yeah, that's right. At night, there's no sun, there's no sunshine. There's no solar power at night. So nuclear power we can produce nuclear power 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It doesn't matter what the weather is. It's kind of more reliable than renewable energy.
But Richard, I'm still really scared and worried about nuclear power. I still think it's really dangerous.
Well, try not to worry, Tom. It's a difficult decision for governments to make. Some countries are quite reliant on nuclear power, for example, the US and France, and some countries don't use it at all, for example, New Zealand. But it is a possible solution for one of our sustainable development goals to provide clean energy for everybody. But I suppose there'll always be a danger associated with nuclear power.
So what about in Japan? How important is nuclear power in Japan?
Well, it was really important. I think before the Fukushima disaster, we had 54 nuclear plants in Japan providing more than 30% of the country's power. Obviously, after the nuclear accident, a lot of those shut down. Mm-hmm. There are now just 10 of those 54 currently in operation. Obviously, we have to get that 30% of energy from somewhere else, and that somewhere else has been fossil fuels mainly, which is damaging to the environment. So there is pressure in Japan to restart the nuclear reactors.
That's a bit scary. I don't like the sound of that.
Well, it's a difficult decision for all governments to make. There's no easy answer. It could be that nuclear power really is the solution to the SDGs, but there will always be a bit of a danger associated with nuclear power.
Okay, I see. So if we can be 100% sure that nuclear power is safe, then it might be the best way to achieve SDG number 7?
That's right, if we can be sure that it's safe. Anyway, that's it for today. That's our chat about nuclear power. I will see you next week.
See you.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the Collabo podcast. Please tune in next time.